how the Republican Party became the party of vigilante violence. This is a remarkable piece. Aaron Gupta writing over on rawstory.com. Ron DeSantis, Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene have all called the white guy who choked to death the black homeless guy on the subway in New York City a hero. Greg Abbott said that he was going to pardon Daniel Perry, the guy who was convicted of murdering Garrett Foster during a Black Lives Matter protest in Austin, Texas. Perry texted a friend, quote, "I might have to kill a few people on my way." And then he drove his car into a crowd before shooting Foster. Ted Cruz was among the Republican officials who mocked the assault on Nancy Pelosi's husband. Paul Gosar, the fascist from Arizona, tweeted an altered anime video showing Andrea Ocasio-Cortez with a sword to the neck. In the 2020 National Republican Convention, they glorified this white couple who pulled out guns on unarmed, peaceful Black Lives Matter protesters. Remember those two lawyers? They came as guests to the RNC. This has become a campaign staple, violence. You see Republicans, shooting assault weapons, blowing up things, running into houses with guns. I mean, this is their thing now for Republicans is showing how violent they can become. What's this doing to our society? Vox did an in-depth piece on this, and they found 40 times between 2016 and 2020 when Donald Trump explicitly and overtly called for violence. And the result of that was that threats against members of Congress after Trump's first year in office went up in 2021, increased tenfold. That's a 1,000% increase, I think? I don't do math well. 9,625 incidents just in 2021. Vox says far-right terror is currently the most significant ideological threat in the United States. Remember, Trump was praising Kyle Rittenhouse, and the Republican Party up in Washington State, I believe, no, it was in Idaho, just last month, had a shooting time with Kyle, where you could come and shoot with Kyle, using the same gun or the same type of gun that he used to murder two people in Minneapolis and blow half the upper arm of a third person off. It really started the night of Trump's inauguration. There was a right-wing couple who shot and nearly killed a left-wing protester in Seattle. Within months, we had far-right riots. Now, this is before BLM. This was a year before Black Lives Matter. In fact, it was 3 years before Black Lives Matter. We had far-right riots right here in Portland, with the Proud Boys basically taking over the city and the cops letting them do it, doing their, and they were doing it in Berkeley as well, in Berkeley, California. And then, of course, you had the Unite the Right rally in August 2017 in Charlottesville, Virginia. And they continue to sell this stuff. I mean, this was Nixon's Southern strategy on steroids. The Republicans claiming, oh, it's blacks who are responsible for crime. Right, when, who has been the most violent in the history of the United States? White people. Who killed Native Americans? White people. Who enslaved black people? White people. Who commits the majority of crime in the United States? White people. Who steals literally hundreds of billions of dollars a year in white-collar crime? White people. They're blaming illegal drugs on Mexicans when, some of them are coming from Mexico, but it's white people demanding those drugs. They're blaming Muslims for terrorism when actually the largest threat, the largest number of Americans, over 90% of all Americans who have been killed since the turn of the century by political terrorists in the United States were killed by right-wingers. It's virtually 100% if you exclude 9/11. Reagan used his dog whistles. He talked about welfare queens. We know who he's talking. He talked about strapping young bucks buying steaks with food stamps. Doesn't that upset you when you're standing in line behind one of these strapping young bucks? Right. We know what you're talking about, Ronnie. He said the Voting Rights Act was a humiliation to the South. Right, because it let black people vote. George Herbert Walker Bush coming into office with the Willie Horton ads. And, you know, arguing when he was running against Michael Dukakis that black rapists are running amok. Right. This is America today. We have an entire political party that is running on racism. Period. Full stop. This is what they do. And, you know, and the key to it, this whole thing, I mean, the essence of racism is bullying. And bullying is really, you know, you want to define fascism in a single word, it's bullying. So first they, you know, I mean, we have a long history of bullying black people in the United States, and then Hispanics, brown people, bullying Chinese people or Asian people, the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1886, for example. And of course, you know, not just bullying, but slaughtering Native Americans who filled every nook and cranny of this country when Columbus first arrived here. And now they're going after the queer community. Now they're going after queer people. They're the LGBTQ community with these anti-drag laws, among others. Well, in Tennessee, a federal judge who was appointed in 2017 by Donald Trump called him out. They had passed this law. It was called the Adult Entertainment Act, the AEA, that said that performers who performed in wearing the costume of the gender that they were not assigned at birth could go to prison if there was a kid in the audience. And he basically took it to him. He said, this is about free speech. This is about the First Amendment. People get to dress however they damn well please in America. And drag performances are not sexual. You don't see people humping each other in a drag performance. There's not simulated sex. There's not, you know, they're not sexual. They're about, you know, arguably about gender. He referred to them as you know, female impersonators in his decision. But he said this is impermissible. The impermissible purpose of this law is chilling constitutionally protected speech. He said, any law like this that is, you know, this restrictive, he said, that mandate as to speech is limited by the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, which commands that laws infringing on freedom of speech must be narrow and well-defined, and this law, the AEA, is neither. It's a 2-day trial with a federal judge who was a Trump appointee. This is a guy who was, you know, vetted by the Federalist Society. He went on to say, the chance that an officer could abuse the wide discretion given for enforcing obscenity laws is troubling, given an art form like drag that some would say purposefully challenges the limits of society's accepted norms. It's brilliant. He's calling drag an art form, which it is. And he's saying that it's an art form that is actually a political statement. It's challenging society's accepted norms, which it is. And the Supreme Court has historically, and all courts basically, have historically held that the most protected form of free speech is political free speech. It's more protected than any other form of free speech. And you know, you've got Republicans trying to say, oh no, this is obscenity. No, he's saying it's not obscenity. This is an art form that is making a political statement. He says the law failed the strict scrutiny test. It violates 2 other constitutional restrictions. It's too vague and it's overbroad. Good on this guy. I mean, we're starting to see the pushback. This is what we're starting to see. We're starting to see the pushback now. You've got Republican candidates who are calling out Donald Trump for president. Chris Christie's about to get into the race, and he's going to go after Trump with you know, everything he's got. And other candidates are starting to cautiously criticize Donald Trump. I think you're going to see a lot more of that once he's arrested by Jack Smith. knock wood. We're starting to see the rise of moderate Republicans. Now, I realize that, many people consider that an oxymoron, and we all understand that a moderate Republican is one who simply wants to do the bidding of the big oil companies and the rich people and big corporations in America, but doesn't necessarily want to do all that on the back of black people and queer people. Doesn't need to demonize people, doesn't want to destroy public education, for example, simply because the Supreme Court ruled that it has to be integrated. But I think that we're at a turning point. I really do. I think that the Republican Party is in a crisis right now, and I think that they're going to be reinventing themselves. I think that America is waking the hell up to what's going on. We talked about taxes earlier. Americans are figuring out that this is a scam that Reagan started 42 years ago. I'm actually very optimistic about where this is all going.